Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm going to do a little bit of a live programming demonstration for you. So I'm going to do an example program for a hybrid athlete who wants to lift 4 days a week, run 3 days a week, get stronger at squat, bench and deadlift, bring down their 5K time and just improve their running generally. But yeah, it really seems like you guys enjoy when I lean into the more practical side of things rather than the more theory discussion side of things on this channel. So I thought I'd try to do that where possible, and today's video is a great opportunity to do that. You also notice that I'm not in my regular YouTube studio, so moved houses over the weekend. So today is going to be a little bit all over the place, but I'm hoping to have a proper YouTube studio set up soon. So that's really exciting. And so last thing before we dive into the actual programming, I just want to make the point before I get all the questions of, oh, can I swap this squat variation for this squat variation? Or can I add an extra set of squats here? Or can I change the day that I do the run on? My whole programming philosophy is based around this idea that all the scientific evidence gives us this bandwidth of good enough. How we find optimal here at General Physical Preparation is by working collaboratively, the individual context, and also the preferences of the client that we're making the program for. So many of the answers to those questions will just be common sense based and also based on your individual context. So if you think you need an extra set of squats, do an extra set of squats. If you want to drop a set of squats, if you want to increase the intensity by an RPE point on one of the runs, or if you want to pick a different variation of bicep curl, these are the exact sorts of changes that we talk about where it's like, you know, okay, pretty much every bicep curl falls within the bandwidth of good enough. How you find the optimal one is you just find the one that your client really wants to train. It can be deeper than that. Like we can, try to feed, different mobility aspects in with all these exercises. But broadly speaking, a bicep curl is a bicep curl. If you want to learn our complete framework for designing programs for people who want to get stronger, hybrid athletes, or for general strength and conditioning, I highly recommend you check out GPP Level 1 down below. It has an amazing curriculum from programming, sprinting, plyometrics, learning the Olympic lifts, our take on minimum effective dose strength training, and tying it in with all the other qualities. On top of the pre-recorded curriculum, you also get unlimited access to me through a Discord. You're in there for life. We also have 3 live calls a week where I'm on there answering questions, helping all the GPP Level 1 coaches with the application of the content, and just basically helping them with whatever they need help with. It's like an ongoing mentorship. GPP Level 1 is the best money you will spend on continuing education as a coach. All right, now let's go write this program. All right, so welcome to my coaching spreadsheet. It's nothing special, but it gets the job done. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 resistance training sessions, and then the running prescription will go down in this box here. As far as the training prescription, basically just got to pay attention to the red column and then the blue column. The green column onwards is for the client to fill out, or if I need a demonstration video for the exercise. So exercise name goes here, and then we've got a bunch of different prescription variations. Sometimes I'll prescribe an RPE, sometimes I'll prescribe a specific weight. I never really dictate rest times. I just let clients figure that out for themselves unless they're being really egregious with it. Then I just get the client to record the actual weight that they lifted and was it at the target RPE, or if not, they just record it there down as well. So I just know the weights they're lifting, how hard they're feeling. And then for our cardio prescription, have a name or a goal for the run. And then we've obviously got any sets if we're doing intervals. Sometimes, or most often, I'll prescribe duration because again, time to train is usually the limiting factor for a lot of my athletes. But then occasionally I will give them a specific distance, sometimes a specific rest for certain intervals. And then I'll just give them an overall effort rating for the session or for each interval as well. Information that they then record, the distance that they covered and then the RPE, because essentially on my end, I ultimately just want to know how many miles that they're racking up and what intensity those miles are at on average. Before we put any pen to paper here, again, I just want to remind everyone that all this is adaptable to the individual. That is the central premise of my whole coaching philosophy, okay? All the science and theory in the world, it establishes our bandwidth of good enough. True optimization comes from meeting the individual where they're at, taking in their individual preferences, logistics, their scheduling. These are the things that create true optimization, not training theory swimming around in your head, theory crafted on programs. Having said that, this will be a pretty good program that would work for a lot of people, especially if you just individualize it a little bit to your context, or you run it for a week. Even better, run it for a couple of weeks back to back and then start to make some changes. So this is a program for a hybrid athlete, but if you're an Alex Viada glazer like I am, you'll know that there's a lot of stereotypes about what a hybrid athlete is, but then hybrid can really just be anything. This is a little bit more of a stereotypical hybrid. This hypothetical person that we're writing a program for, very common for people like this to come to me, oh, I want to lift 4 days a week, run 3 days a week, or yeah, I guess I'd like a good 5K time and some good SBD numbers. That's what this is what our male athlete is in his 30s, working a corporate job. This is what he's trying to do. So often when someone's going 4 days a week, wanting to improve their SBD, I would just go an AB structure. I'll go squat and bench on days 1 and 3, and then I'll do their hinge work, a lot more posterior chain emphasis or backside of the body emphasis on the B sessions. I also like to front load the week because just when you work with real people, you'll notice their lives generally spin out of control more towards the end of the week. Typically, Monday through Tuesday, Wednesday, pretty locked in. Wednesday onwards, things start to get a little bit chaotic. Not for everyone, but that's the general pattern that I've noticed. So I love front loading the week. I also front load the week for my weekly competitive field sports athletes. Big front end of the week loaders here at General Physical Preparation. Okay, so primary squat. So that'll be our top set, then we'll primary squat, our back off sets, and then we'll go straight into primary bench back off sets. Ooh, got to leave a couple of rows for their trademark plyo warm-up. Okay, so plyo warm-up. On day 2, we're going to actually open up the week with our secondary hinge. I know I said I'd like to front load the week. That's just generally sort of speaking. I have a hard run and a primary strength session at the start of the week, but that I don't want them going primary. So I will leave one primary session, their primary deadlift session, towards the end of the week, just to create a little bit of a scoop through the middle of the week where things get a bit cruisier. For Romanian deadlifts, it'll pretty much be straight sets as well. So then we'll have plyo warm-up, secondary squat, top set and back off there as well. Secondary bench, top set and back offs, and actual deadlift workout. Let's do top set and back off for that as well, because we just love a bit of top set and back off here at General Physical Preparation. Gets results and people enjoy it. Okay, cool. Okay, so when it comes to the sets and reps side of things, when I'm onboarding an athlete with this sort of goals, usually they'll be coming from a place where they're currently running some sort of hybrid program. So I'll get them to send me what they're currently doing and obviously then have a discussion about whether or not they feel like it's working for them, are their numbers tracking well, and then base my initial volume prescription off that. With none of that information to reference, we'll just sort of go off the averages of what typically works for a lot of the people that I'll train. And a classic for those sorts of people. So obviously we've got our 1 top set and then 3 back off sets. Again, especially for squat and dead, you can really pull that back to 2 back off sets for a lot of people. Bench will typically need just a little bit extra volume. There's a whole bunch of reasons you can sort of debate as to why you think that may be. That's just the pattern that I've identified. Obviously I have my own ideas, but could be a bunch of reasons. For a top set, we like anything between 1 and 5 reps. I'm just going to dish out singles here because people typically enjoy them. Then for squat, let's go some back off sets of 3. Bench press, I want people to get a few more practice reps in, so let's just go sets of 5. For an RPE prescription, typically we want the top set to be a little bit cruisier than what we're going to do the back off sets at, because we just want really clean, tight execution for the top single. So RPE 6 to 7, the stronger they are, the closer to a 6 they'll probably describe. The weaker they are, the higher up to a 7 and above. That'll likely go for that top set, especially on squats, and the back off sets anywhere between 7 to an 8. Depending on whether you're training someone who's more prone to over or undershooting will also inform my prescription and what side of that I lean into. Primary bench press, we can go a little bit higher with the intensity on the single. Let's just go at RPE 7, and then definitely want at least RPE 8 for the back off sets there. RDL, it's going to do 3 sets of 5 at an RPE. I usually like to start out the RPE a little bit lighter, honestly, even just like a 6 to a 7 on RDLs, but then I'd be pretty keen on cranking this intensity up to at least an RPE 8 once I've seen they've got nice hinge mechanics and they're actually getting what I want from this exercise. It's pretty much just to build the musculature associated with deadlifting, but also trying to get a nice clean hinge pattern. We don't really care about athletes lifting with a flexed spine. It's going to happen when you deadlift anyway, but we think a more neutral spine is better for training up all that hip musculature. Primary deadlift, conventional deadlifts, deadlifting from the floor in general, I just don't think it's as good for working on your hinge mechanics. So if I'm going to do it in an exercise, I'll do it on the secondary with our RDL. So then for secondary squat, might hit a set of 2. Secondary bench, let's hit a top triple. We'll just do 2 back off sets for the secondary squat, and we'll still do 3 sets for the secondary bench. I mean, hell, we might even end up with 4 sets on the primary day, and then 3 or 4 sets on the secondary day as well. Some people just need a lot of sets to get their bench moving the direction they want it to. And we'll go some higher reps on the secondary squat day and screw it, let's go sets of 7 on secondary bench day, because why not? Now, as far as what a secondary squat or bench day may be to you, it can be the exact same variation, so just a competition squat or a competition bench. Secondary days is also where I often will introduce variation, not always. Sometimes it's if I'm trying to work on a weak point with the lifter, sometimes it's for novelty and enjoyment and just not doing the same lifts every time. For example, this could be a pause squat. Actually, I feel weird typing that in because I honestly don't prescribe pause squats that much anymore. What is a squat variation that I do prescribe? Tempo squat. Especially so, typically when I prescribe a tempo squat, tempo specifically is referring to the time it takes them to get to parallel. So talking about a nice high bar Olympic style back squat, I want them, if I prescribe a 3-second tempo, it's 3 seconds to get to parallel, and then you can actually accelerate into the hole and get a nice bounce. That's why I moved away from pause squats. I did prescribe, it was my go-to variation, but I noticed it would really just mess with people's bounce in their squats. So I've sort of moved away from it a little bit. When it comes to variations, I'm much more likely to be prescribing variation on secondary and even tertiary or onwards bench presses. Typically just because there's more technical components of the lift that we're working on, and we'll be using one variation to target a certain aspect of that lift. So one of the ones I've had a lot of success playing around with, toggling between the primary and the secondary day, is a Larsen press. I feel like it really helps people figure out what they're actually doing with their legs, gives them a bit of contrast. Same way I like the arms and no arms contrast with teaching people with their leaping, teaching them the contribution of the arms. There's a similar sort of thing you can play with Larsen press in bench press. So Larsen. Beautiful. And our RPE is just a little bit lower. So secondary squat is going to be 6 for the top set, 7 for the back offs. Want them moving nicely, not too much velocity loss. Secondary bench, we can actually keep the intensity a little bit higher. We'll still go cruisy on the top set. We'll put in a little bit more work on the back offs. We'll keep it in an RPE 8. Even though the intensity is just as high as the primary day on the back off sets, we've got a variation in there, so that's enough for me to categorize it as a secondary day. It is also just the second bench day. And then finally for our deadlift, let's go a top single, and then I might give them 3 back off sets, 3 sets of 2. I like lower reps even for the back off sets for the deadlifts. There's no real rhyme or reason. I just don't find higher rep deadlifts particularly enjoyable. But still staying fairly low in the RPE, definitely not going above RPE 6 on a regular basis for a top set of deadlifts. Or you can, it's all what you can handle. Create any hard and fast rules. I want to encourage everyone, whether you're a coach or an athlete, you got to experiment with your athletes' training to find out what's best for them. Don't accept any of these hard and fast rules you hear content creators talk about online in their content. There are no hard and fast rules. It's what works for your client is the rule. That's why you're getting all these unnecessary rants as I make this program for this hypothetical person that doesn't even exist. There are a lot of people that exist that would respond well to a program like this. Anyway, back offsets, want to work a little bit harder, still keeping it nice and clean, RPE 7 there. So 4 total sets of deadlift, anywhere between 6 to 8 total sets of squats per week. None of those values are final. We're just going to run it for a few weeks with the client and then see how they're responding to things. And then we can add or even subtract volume potentially depending on how things are going. And here we have the skeleton of the lifting program. So their primary lifting goals are getting their squat, bench, and deadlift to go up. So when I'm writing the program, I will always keep that stuff front and center. They want to get squat, bench, and dead is the focus. That goes in the program first. And then I'll just fit in all the accessory lifts or the general hypertrophy work around it, as well as the trademark GPP signature plyometric warm-up. So let's get to that. So leaping variation. I don't know how Matt Watson pilled you guys are. So we'll go 2-legged plyo variation. So we call that leaping because we use the Matt Watson system here at General Physical Preparation. And then single-legged plyo. That's pretty much how we set up all of our warm-ups to get at least 3 plyometric exposures throughout the week. So this would typically be 3 to 4 sets, 3 to 4. So 3 to 4 sets of a 2-legged or leaping variation, and then 3 to 4 sets of a potentially slightly more intensive single-legged plyometric variation, whether that's hopping, continuous on one leg, or bounding, alternating between a single leg will typically be one of those. And we'll have some variation of both of those in 3 times a week, just for 10-minute bowls of plyometric work, which is just a really nice dose to start out your hybrid athletes, so you're getting a little bit of that in your training. Typically, I like 3 to 4 exposures of that per week. So we're just going to start every single session with some sort of variation. Maybe this will be crescendo leaps. That's an absolute favorite. I think that's the most viewed video on my channel. One of the videos I've got in the free Plyometric program. And here we might have another GPP classic, which is hop, bound. So that is jumping from one leg to that same leg, and then you swap on the next rep. Then you go to the same leg, and you swap on the next rep. Really, really good way of bridging the gap between bounding and hopping, because there is quite a difference athletically speaking, especially the limb velocity you need to go from single leg jumping, alternating legs, versus single leg jumping, staying on that same leg. It's crazy. Anyway, and even though it's technically not an RPE, we'll just say medium intensity for all of these. All right, medium intensity. Even though theoretically speaking, we can play with either of the intensities and adapt them to the individual, realistically, what you're going to be doing here a lot of the time is exploring a little bit more intensity in the two-legged variations, because the athlete will likely be able to handle that better, especially if they don't have extensive experience with plyometric training. And it's your single-legged variation where you're really going to have to keep them in the pocket, tell them to dial back the intensity, keep it completely light. Big one is just reminding them, hey, we're still just trying to use this as a warm-up. The bonus is then they're not going to overly thrash their shins, ankles, and knees and run into the problems that are sometimes associated with more intense plyometric training. Anyone who's just getting into plyos, dial back the intensity on your single-legged plyometrics, and you'll benefit so much because you'll be able to tolerate so many more ground interactions, and then that's really how you stimulate those changes. On another day, for example, we can go into some backwards leaps, and then for our single-legged plyo, let's go just for some medium bounds, so alternating legs, medium intensity bounds. Crescendo, backwards leaps. Next one, for example, could be arms, no arms, just contrasting that every 5 reps. Then for your single-legged variation, it could be hops with 2 horizontal, 1 vertical. Okay, so we'll use micro variation within that weekly plyometric prescription. It's essentially the same thing 4 times over, but there's micro variation in there. Trying to get that sweet spot, trying to get some consistent exposure to certain types of landings, but then also just feeding in different constraints for them to play around with and gain new experiences, a little bit of movement exploration, if you will. So many layers to everything we're doing here. It's kind of joking when I say that. It can be as simple as you want it to be, but there's also, there are some sophisticated layers. Hey, get in GPP level 1, then you understand some of the sophistication we've got going on here. All right, so let's just fill in some of our classic push day accessories. I have a tricep. I've been loving a Poliquin push down. So that's the one where you're laying on the incline bench, supported like that, just doing a bilateral tricep extension. If there's a tricep extension variation you want to try, just plug that in there. 2 to 3 sets. So again, this would mainly be dictated by schedule, not the ideal amount of volume to stimulate triceps growth. At the point we're doing accessories, maybe the client has to jump on a work call. Maybe they've just got to get home, mow the lawn, or do the dishes or something. So things start to get a little bit more flexible in the back end of the session. 2 to 3 sets, 10 double progression. I like to go 8 to 10 reps. Bit of double progression there. And again, this would be RPE 9 to 10. Lateral raises, crotch height, cable raise. Been loving that variation. Another variation that I've been liking with a lot of my clients who don't have access to good cable machines is lengthened partial lateral raises. Really good practical application of lengthened partials, lateral raises with free weights, and your calf training. So many of those exercises are really enhanced just by that stretch position and being able to emphasize that. Those 2 in particular. Lateral raises, again, 2 to 3 sets, 8 to 10 reps, higher intensity. And just because this day isn't too blown out yet, we'll throw in some core just to finish off. So the classic sagittal plane core training here, a general physical preparation, is a gar hammer raise on a low incline bench. Sick core exercise, 2 to 3 sets. Good luck, 8 to 10 reps. Pick your incline wisely. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it onto the bottom of our secondary push day, except I will change this to a side bend variation. Let's go Smith machine side bend. Love that one. On an RPE. So don't want to push that one as hard because it can get quite heavy and then tank your primary deadlift session the next day. So just being aware of that. Then on our posterior focus day, so typically in this slot, we're either going to go hammy curl or some sort of hip thrust variation, and that's down to the athlete and just what they need more of, assessing the muscle bulk on their body and what strengths or weaknesses they have through a hinge pattern. You know, it may come down to their execution of an RDL. They're much more stiff-legged with their RDL execution. Then I might want to give them a little bit more glute work to top that up. Are they very do they maybe let their knees get involved a little bit on their RDL? Do they even have a slight positive shin angle? That would mean it's really glute-biased Romanian deadlift. So then that way I'll whack them on the hammy curl after it. So regardless, 2 to 3 sets, 4 to 6 reps, let's say, at a moderate intensity again. 6 to 7. Let's go 7 to 8 here. Next, we have to put in our vertical push pull, and I'll rotate which one of those we do first. So vertical pull first on pull day 1, and then on pull day 2, we'll go horizontal first. Or if you're like me and you're really trying to work on your lats at the moment and you're getting a lot more lats in your vertical pull, I'll do those first on both days. So again, that can be customized down to the individual. With no other information, I'll just alternate so they get an even mix of both. So vertical pull, horizontal pull. Short on time, I always superset these. It's just really nice feeling superset. So horizontal pull first, then pull. I will not do extra hammy work or hip thrust work on the primary deadlift day, usually just because I feel like the deadlift stimulus, it's a big stimulus, that's enough to cover it. Having said that, there is a little bit of space there. If you feel like you need more posterior chain work or more glute development, that is something where you can feed that accessory in on the primary deadlift day as well. For most people, that's unnecessary, and you can just sort of drive the deadlift just with this sort of a prescription. So proper deadlift workout with at least 4 high quality sets, and then another secondary day with at least 3 sets of some sort of secondary hinge, then a couple of sets of a hammy curl or some sort of hip thrust variation, and then your upper back work. Most people have time for 3 sets here, 3 sets, 3 sets, 6 to 8 reps. Don't need to be leaving much in the tank here, 9 to 10 every time. Okay. Okay, then we finish off with a lengthen bias curl, and this is where we could put some calf training. With the amount of plyometric work, I've actually been experimenting with not doing any calf strength training at the moment. Not that I'm against it, but here's where you could put it in potentially. I'll tell you, if you can't put some serious weight on both the straight leg calf raise and a seated calf raise, you can't skip your calf raises here, or neither can you climb. But if you're already strong at them, I'll let you skip them because you've got your plyometrics, you've got your running, you're putting the calves through enough. All right, so let's make the last exercise here. Go home to your family. Oop, didn't fill in the sets and reps for the bicep curl, so 2 to 3 sets, 6 to 8 reps, and RPE 10. Cool, we pop that into our secondary day as well. So 3 sets, 2 to 3 sets, 6 to 8 for the lot, 1 to 10, and boom, go home. Pretty sure I've covered everything there. At this point, I would usually flick off the program to the client and have them review it. And then if there's anything I'm missing, it usually comes up. But I think that's a pretty good AB, push-pull setup. All right, now let's get into the running prescription. So we're going to be running 3 times a week. So when it comes to running goals, I don't really think in terms of energy systems. I just try to think, am I exposing my athlete to enough mileage that they're going to have the conditioning to survive their running goals? So whether that's developing the conditioning to be able to tolerate, regular 5Ks and 10Ks, or whether they want to build themselves up to a marathon. And so with my running prescription, I usually just have a goal for each of those runs. So I'll try to get in 1 longer run, 1 harder / faster run, and then a cruisy run or easy run. But if you don't like the look of this sort of running prescription, just realize that the options are limitless as long as you're doing a general amount of miles that are close enough to the distance that you want to prepare for, and you're getting around some of the paces somewhat frequently in your training that are going to have you moving at the pace required to achieve your running goals. You're sweet. That's all you need to think about. And then with those constraints, you're basically just trying to pack in as much running as your schedule will allow. And that's the primary constraint I run into with a lot of my hybrid athletes. It's whether it's boredom or literally just the time they have available to train, that ultimately ends up constraining a lot of their efforts. And that is why for a lot of the runs, I will often prescribe duration over a distance. Sometimes there are top-down constraints. I'm like, hey, I just need you to get 10Ks in. Most of of the time it's like, hey, I know you have half an hour. Let's sort of see what mileage you can get at this intensity within that time frame. Real practical shit. We train people with jobs here who have places to be. Don't give them a distance prescription. Just let them tell you how much time they have and they'll get it done for you. And so further to that point, when is my client going to get in their longer 1 hour run? Whenever they can get it in. Oh, I can only get it in before primary squat day. Big whoop. I can only get it done after primary squat day. Like literally on the same day after I leave the gym. Cool. Whenever you can get it done. I think there's a lot of fear. And this is something where hybrid athletes sometimes get too caught up in the all or nothing or the I've got to optimize everything mindset. You can make amazing progress running on slightly tired legs. You're probably not going to make great progress and you're going to have a horrible experience. You're going to have a horrible hybrid experience if you are always running on trashed legs. But doing most of your running on legs that aren't 100%, that's just the reality of good hybrid training and fitting everything into 7 days. Okay, so here's a vague outline of the prescription. We'll give it some effort and some intensity soon. But one of the other variations I like prescribing, for example, if someone has a 5K goal, I'll often get them to do a number of 1 kilometer intervals at the pace that they want to run their 5K at with a decent amount of rest. So, things like that can be really good workouts. Whether or not we're trying to get any specific adaptation, I'm more just trying to come up with running workouts that my client's not getting bored of that fit into their schedule. That's the main thing. And that also is the thing that will allow you to get the most creative with it, realizing that those are the main constraints so you can do anything within those constraints. So there's also RPE-based effort prescriptions. So let's just go RPE 7 for the longer run, RPE 8 to 9 for the harder run, then RPE 5 to 6 for the cruisy run. Cool. So what I like about this is you can't use a heart rate monitor or you can't use any sort of watch to outsource how you're feeling. It's a bit of self-awareness we're developing here. And I just need you to go out and give me something that feels a 7 out of 10, especially if you're not running a sub 20 minute 5K. Like this is the sort of intensity monitoring that I wish more people were into, just purely subjective. On a scale of 1 to 10, deep down if you're overshooting or undershooting. Realistically, this is going to be zone 3, higher end of zone 3. This would be zone 3 to 4, even the upper end of zone 4. And then this would be zone 2 to 3, depending on your fitness level. Some people just won't get any running done if you keep them in zone 2. But that's sort of the athlete we're designing this program for. Someone who's, they've got a little bit of running together, but maybe their 5K is sitting around 25 minutes or something like that. They'd like to get it down under 20. This is the sort of programming that will get most people heading in that direction. Your 500-pound deadlifter, a little bit over 400-pound squat, slapping a 260-pound bench maybe, and you want to get your first sub 20-minute 5K. I think this is the sort of programming that's going to get a lot of people there in my experience. If you enjoyed that and the way I talk about program design in general, and you want to learn more about how we do things here at General Physical Preparation so you can do the same with your clients or your own training, please check out GPP Level 1 down below. I also have some one-to-one coaching slots available, so there's a form you can fill out there if you're keen. If not, YouTube will be suggesting 2 more videos you can watch. So, all right, sorry, I had to come back and record this. I nearly completely forgot this part because a whole bunch of you will not know how to work this program, I guess, week to week, because we do things a little bit differently here. We have a more reactive week to week approach to programming or periodization, or some people refer to it as the golden microcycle. So for most of our athletes, especially our newer athletes, we run very static, reactive approaches to programming, which basically means the client or the athlete will go through this week of training and they're going to record all the weights that they lift, and then they're going to record how hard it was. They're going to record the distances they achieved in their runs and again, how hard that was. And we're just going to copy and paste this program for about 4 to 6 weeks. And that's where all our data and trends will emerge from, this static program where nothing is changing week to week. And what we're looking out for is our positive trends. That tells us that our dose of training is in a very good place. And seeing as we've gone pretty low on the volume end, we may also see some detraining patterns emerging as well in some of the lifts. And that's where we can add in a little bit more volume, or maybe just try to push the intensity a little bit harder. And it doesn't mean that we have to do a strict copy and paste where we make absolutely no changes. Sometimes there are obvious patterns emerging just from week 1, so we can make some changes on the fly. But this idea is that the closer we are to running the exact same week of training, the cleaner the data is that we're getting from it. And so any changes that you're making should just be reflective of the trends that you're seeing come through this green part of the spreadsheet and the communication you're receiving from your athlete. We're just just trying to hone in on a really good week we're just trying to hone in on one really sick week of training. It just really clicks with the client, the perfect dose for a week of training, which is in of itself a bit of a moving target, but there should be just this general approximation of it that we're working out over time. Anyway, once the program's stabilized after a couple of weeks of copy and pasting and then a little bit of experimentation to get your doses right, then you can start doing things like periodically ramping up the RPE. So for example, when I feel like I'm in good shape for a squat PR, I will start to ramp up the RPE for the top set. And in those weeks, we might also reduce the dose on the back off sets, whether it's just pulling back the intensity or even just taking away a set if we're really pushing the top end. And that's how we work towards our squat, bench, and deadlift PRs while we're chasing down these run times. The running aspect of the program behaves the exact same way. We copy and paste this weekly running schedule, and then we hope that just greater distances emerge at lower average RPEs over time. Watch some of my content and enjoy it. All right, I'll talk to you soon.